Good Friday morning to everyone, and welcome to CEO Secrets. You are here with Vinny Ribas and myself, Tony Bodoh. Vinny, how are you doing this morning?
I am incredible. How are you, Tony?
You're always incredible. I love that about you. Always the positive attitude.
Gotta be. It's mindset, and if you don't, you have to. Sometimes you have to convince yourself you're that way. But if you're saying that to other people, there's no way you can be any other way.
Yeah, I think you've ingrained it so deeply that it emanates from you. I think that's one of the things that I know people when they meet you, they're just impressed with how you're always on the top of your game, or always up there, thinking about the opportunities for them, thinking about what you can do to help them, and always in that kind of give state, which I think is part of what makes life incredible for you, and for the people around you. And so today we're going to talk about principle 4 that brilliant business owners use to guide their business, to protect their business. And this is a very important principle. I know we talked about this one for quite a while, Vinny, because we were trying to figure out how exactly it made sense. I mean, and you'll understand when we share it with you. We're going to share it with you in a second here, but this role has always been, or this principle has always been one that I've been challenged with until we had our deep discussions around it. And I think it comes out of my experience working in corporate America. It didn't seem like they believed this. And that would explain to some extent why a lot of businesses don't thrive as they could. So, Vinny, with that, what is principle number 4 that brilliant business owners use to guide their business?
Well, I think it's principle number 5, isn't it? No?
I think we're at 4 today.
4. My notes say 5.
We must be in the wrong show. We're a week ahead.
It is that all the roles in the system are equally important to each other. And for those of you who haven't been following us, in one of the earlier episodes, we talked about the 13 roles that are inherent in any business, no matter what size it is. If you are a solo entrepreneur or if you are a Fortune 500 companies, there are 13 major roles that need to be taken care of. And it sounds scary when you start thinking about solopreneur having to cover 13 roles. But it is the challenge that every business faces, and that most businesses and business owners fail to understand. And therefore they're, no matter how good they are at 12 of the 13, there is a link that's broken in the chain. And so we're going to dive into those 13 roles as how they are related to each other and why they're so important, and how you can, as a solo entrepreneur, small business owner, medium-sized business owner, or major business owner, be sure that all of these roles are taken care of and are being dealt with the weight that they have to have in your business.
Absolutely. And just to give an analogy here, if you recognize your business as a system that creates value, everyone, I think, recognizes that when we say it. They may not think about that, but if you think about it from that perspective for a moment, and you say, well, my business is a system that creates value, and then you begin to think of this analogy of like a factory, right? So you put some raw materials, your skills, your talents, those of your team, into the system, and you go through and you have these 13 different roles, which includes the CEO, of course, the head of finance, the head of marketing, the head of sales, right? All of those roles have to be covered. Operations, risk management, personnel, there's all these different things. And if they're not managed well, if they're not managed at all, then in a factory, it'd be like having 1 or 2 or 3 machines missing when you're making widgets. That widget will never come out of the end of the machines, end of the factory, and be able to be shipped because it's poor quality. And so the same thing happens in your business as a system. If you don't have all those roles covered in some way, now we're going to talk about how it doesn't have to be employees covering those roles, but if you don't have those 13 roles covered, then what's going to happen is your business actually will not provide the value that it could, and it may cause you to actually fail. It could cause some very catastrophic results. For some businesses, it just means they never quite thrive the way they could. And I think that's really important for us, thinking about your business as like a factory that creates value, and all the different roles have got to play in that to help you create the value.
I shut the volume on my phone here.
No worries. So we're going to dive in. We're going to dive into this now, and we're going to go a little bit deeper here so you can really understand. If you've got questions, please put them out there in the chat box for us. Even if you're watching us live, let us know where you're coming in from. If you're watching the replay, let us know as well where you're coming from, and then drop your questions. We monitor this as time passes, so I get alerted and I respond to the questions. Vinny responds to the questions as we go. So Vinny, let's talk deeper about this idea that all roles in the system are equally important. All roles in your business are equally important because they're all there to create or preserve or protect the value that you're creating.
Absolutely. It's so critical to understand all of the components of your system. And I think this is probably the first piece that people miss, is not knowing what all those 13 roles are, number one. And number two, what usually happens is people concentrate on what they know, what they feel their strength is. And quite often the ones that are either, I don't enjoy doing that, or I'm not good at that, or whatever, get left by the wayside. Maybe they get very little time, or they get absolutely no time, or they're done with a poorer quality. And what we're trying to say here is that each role has to have each one has its own weight that it has to have in your business. And every business is going to be different. Some businesses are going to be very sales heavy. Others are going to be more operations heavy, or they're, it's going to be different for every business, no matter what size you are. But the bottom line is, if one of these is missing, you have a cog in the wheel, and you're going to run into a challenge. And so you as the CEO, you as the business owner, have to be the person who is identifying the roles, knowing, okay, these are the things that I can do. Or I like to think of the CEO's role, first of all, setting the mission and the vision for the company. You got to do that. If you don't have that, you're going to be lost completely. And it doesn't matter who else you have employed or helping you out, or who the vendors are, it doesn't matter. If you don't have the right mission and you convey that to everybody else that's involved, then you kind of get lost. You're floundering. You don't have a North Star that helps you make the right decisions and everything. So the first thing is you got to have somebody that does that. But the CEO's role is also to identify their strengths, their weaknesses. And I think the CEO needs to be only doing the things that only he or she can do. And that's the first thing is, you have to be.
I want to pause you. I want to pause you right there, Vinny, because I think there's a really important piece here. Is you often, as a CEO or as a business owner, you may not be able to identify your own strengths and your own weaknesses. We all have blind spots, right? And that's where one of the roles that you've got to fill very early on. I mean, this actually, I think, and you can disagree and take a different approach, but I think this role, and that is the board of advisors, right? I think that role has to be filled before you even start the business, because you need to know, it's who do I need to have on my team? What are my strengths and weaknesses? Putting some people around you that you can trust, that can see for your benefit what you are really good at and what you should be doing in the business, and what you're not good at and what you should not be doing in the business, and maybe what you're trying to avoid because you don't like it or it's painful to you to do that. So that would be the first place. Is like, you've got to get that board of advisors, and you're going to get a good one that you trust. I know both of us are on boards for, to be advisors for companies and that. And so I think it's such a critical role for the brilliant business owner to first and foremost figure out who that board of advisors is, so they can have the board there helping guide their thinking.
Absolutely. And there are different kinds of boards. You can have a very formal board that meets monthly or quarterly or something like that. Of course, some companies have a board of directors that's very formal, and others are just more of an advisory board. And it could be just people that you meet with, and go and have coffee with, but people who you trust, who you can open up on what's going on in your business, and they can give you very subjective you have to be open and allow them to tell you exactly what it is that they think is happening in your business, happening with you, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. I think we all know the business owner who, spends all their time on graphic design because they think that's what they're absolutely amazing at. And it's, everybody else is cringing at it because the marketing is totally off. And Will, if you're listening, we're not talking about you. But it's
for context. Will is our partner of ours in a new business we have going on right now, and Will actually does a very good job. He
does an amazing job.
Yeah.
In fact, I've hired him to do other graphic work for me. But the bottom line is that a lot of times CEOs, business owners are not open to hearing that. They're not open to having somebody say, you know what, you're really not that good at that, and your business is going to suffer. I think you should do this. And sometimes that's outsourcing it. Sometimes it's delegating it to somebody. It could be a friend or somebody that you delegate it to. It doesn't matter. You got to figure out what's best for your business. But the bottom line is, you're right, that you have to have people that you trust who are going to tell you exactly what's happening from their point of view as an experienced business owner. And or from their experience in business, put it that way.
And it might start out as a single mentor or a couple mentors that you meet with individually, but eventually there's a tremendous exponential power of getting those individuals together and having them actually kind of bounce ideas off of one another, because they may have differing points of view, and so you go to one and you go to the other and they tell you something different, but when they get together, there's just a power to that
mastermind.
Absolutely.
You and I believe in that, 1,000,000%. It's just, there's nothing like multiplying the power of multiple minds working on the same project at the same time. Even if it's for 10 minutes, miracles happen.
Absolutely. So it's I think for some business owners and some CEOs that might be watching right now, this might be a little controversial to say that all roles are equally important. Let's dive into what we mean by that very specifically. Because we'd be the first people to admit that not every role needs equal time. Not every role needs an equal level of talent. In other words, they don't need like a Mensa level thinker in every role. Bookkeeping is a great example for a lot of small businesses. You may only need a few hours of bookkeeping in your business a month, to handle that. And then you need someone to maybe manage your taxes for at the end of the year, or the end of the quarter, or whatever else. Right. So bookkeeping is one of those where I can see a lot of business owners saying, that's not the same as like sales. I need people in sales, 20 hours a week, or I need to be in front of clients 10 hours a week, or something of that nature. So let's talk a little bit more about why we say each role is equally important.
Well, just use the example that you just said. If you're not doing your books, if nobody's doing your books, where's the business going to be? You have no idea. You have no idea if you're making a profit. You have no idea where you should be spending your money and where you're wasting money. You have no clue. So as little as maybe 2 or 3 hours, something that's only taking that long, and you can pay a bookkeeping company $75 or something to do your books at the end of the month. There's a huge value to that. That has as much weight as making sure that you have sales coming in. And so it is not about the time. It's not about the amount of resources, how much it costs you to be able to fill that role. It's that if that role is not taken care of, there is some kind of there's a break in the system. Something is not going to work right. And the other roles are all dependent on that. Each role is interdependent. If you don't know where the money stands, then you don't know what you can do for training. You don't know if you can pay a salesperson. You don't know if you're making enough money. You don't know if you can invest in operations. I mean, all from the little piece of knowing where your finances are. So it's not about the amount of time that it takes. It's not about the number of resources or how much money you have to invest in it. We're not saying take your money and divide it into 13 pieces and say, okay, this, this piece goes to personnel, this piece goes to education, this piece goes to marketing. That doesn't work. But if you ignore any of it, or you do any of it not to the level of everything else that's being done in the business, where it's having the effect, the reason that it's there. If it's not being effective, then you've broken the system.
I think another element to this that we got to recognize is each role also has a different key performance indicator, KPI, metric, whatever the term is that someone wants to use. And here's a couple examples. And these, I had this conversation with a good friend of mine, Mark S.A. Smith. He's brilliant at this and understanding the executive mindset. And he says, okay, if you look at the CEO is focused on profitability and growth. That is their key performance indicator. If they don't have profitability and growth, if they're not the owner of the company, they'd be fired. That's what, they get hired and fired for, managing that number. There's a lot of other stuff in the business, but that's the number that they manage. The chief financial officer is responsible for cash flow and finding available sources of funding so the business continue to move forward, pay its bills. The head of operations is his or her metric is the P&L. Are they balancing the P&L in their operations on a daily basis? The chief revenue officer, which could be sales or marketing or some combination of the both. They're both out there responsible in different ways for the sales in the organization. Their key metric is sales. How much revenue are they generating, right? And so we could go through all 13 roles, and all 13 roles are going to have a very different metric to determine, are you successful or not in this role? And so you've got to have your eye on those roles, and you have to have your eye on those metrics as well. That's why they're equally important, because any of those metrics don't work. Let's take human resources, or this place that a lot of people are like, well, let's cut back in human resources. Maybe it's in the training budget and side of the human resources, or maybe it's not hiring people when we need them. Well, if you lose your employees, your retention of employees drops way down, and you're having turnover. It costs a fortune to hire new employees. I mean, it really does cost a lot. Or if you don't have the right person in the right place, what opportunities are your business not able to take on? So there's each of these roles are critical to the business. And if they don't work, and if you don't meet that metric, then things fall apart.
Absolutely. And the CEO, like I said, the CEO needs to know what those metrics are within that business, and are they being met? And if not, how are we going to make that happen? And there's no way that there is enough time for the CEO, the business owner, to do it all themselves, and to be an expert in each of the areas so that you meet those metrics. So you might be the person, you might say, I'm doing the marketing, but if you're not good at the marketing, if the graphic design doesn't represent your brand, then you have a challenge. And so, it's not about the amount of time that goes into it, but if you're not looking at the key metrics, you may not even ever realize that your marketing efforts are not where they need to be. So I think that's a really valid point. You have to know what the metrics are, and in every business it's going to be different, and the depth at which you have to look at those has to be different. But every role is dependent on every other role, and they have to work as a system. And if they're totally independent, and if you sit down and you work on, and you've got your marketing department over here and you've got your sales department over here, and they're not talking to each other, well, then sales may be trying to sell something that marketing is not offering, or they're conflicting messages or whatever. I mean, it can get really messy.
Yeah.
And so, you have to maintain that role of the CEO and say, okay, I need to make sure that all of these are being done and the metrics in each part of them are being met. And if not, I have to figure out how to make that happen. And sometimes it's a reality check when you start looking at you're doing it yourself, or it's just 2 people, 3 people in the business, or you and 1 employee and assistant. And it's like, we don't have the expertise in this area. You have to be really honest. That's probably the biggest challenge that well, I would say the biggest challenge most people have is, I can't afford to outsource that. And
I think that's a really good point right now. A lot of people are saying, I can't afford it. That we've had, I don't know what the number's up. It's tens of millions of people who are unemployed right now, because of the, being in the middle of COVID and the lockdown and that, and the recession that we're in now. So let's talk about that reality for a moment, because this is where we are. If they say, I don't have the cash flow to afford it, and they're looking at their numbers saying, Vinny, Tony, I'm looking at my numbers. I do not have the cash flow to afford, to hire a salesperson, or to hire a marketing person, or to do this right now. Let's talk for a moment about how we fill these roles, because frankly, when you start a business, unless you're well funded, you're not going to be able to fill those roles with people. So what are some alternatives to filling these 13 roles for small businesses, especially if they're cash strapped? Let's talk about it from that perspective.
Okay, well, I think this goes back to our book, Leverage. Everybody has way more contacts, resources than they actually think about, unless they actually do think about it and put it down on paper and start looking at all the different resources that they have available to them and all the different people that they have available to them. So you could do things like, you could barter. And I used this example on one of the previous episodes, but I have a client who said, my wife is not working because of COVID, so I can't pay you. And I said, well, it's turning into a barter economy right now. And he said, the only thing I have to barter is a riding lawnmower. And I said, well, I'm looking for a riding lawnmower. And we just bought an acre and 2/3. And that was one of the things we knew we would have to get. So it didn't cost me anything but time. I'm doing my consulting with him, and I got the riding lawnmower. So barter is one way. I think the biggest thing is strategic partnerships. I think a lot of people don't realize, okay, this person already has the customer base that I'm trying to reach. How can we work together so they become my sales team or my marketing team, and they are going to reach the people that I need to be able to reach, and they're going to make money on it. An affiliate program is a perfect way to do that. It's a salesperson on commission, but it's somebody who already has that market. And
well, I want to give another example that just popped in my head here. We're talking about, you mentioned the book Leverage, the book we wrote 2016, and that was we actually wrote that book. I don't know how many people know this, because we haven't talked about this in a while. We actually wrote that book as if coming from the perspective that we had no money to invest in the book. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you do remember, we're like, hey, we could write this book and just write a great book and all that, but how about we write this book using the very principles we're teaching in the book? And so we went out and we created an asset inventory list. What do we actually have? Who do we know? What intellectual property do we have? We went through the whole process as we were creating the book. And part of that process was to look at, okay, we've got some time. So you and I and Connie sat down, we wrote the book together, we edited the book, we sent it out. We had a list of amazing business owners that we deeply respect. We sent it out them. They proofread it. They gave us their thoughts back. They wrote testimonials for it. They were able to jump online when we launched the book we put it on Amazon KDP. It didn't cost us any money to launch it as an ebook. We've never actually turned it into a physical copy. But we launched it as an ebook, as a Kindle book, and they were, the people that we had contacted were out there praising the book, putting testimonials out there, buying books, sending them to their colleagues. And so we hit number one within, I think, the first 24 hours of launching the book, because we used the principles in the book. And I share that because we invested no money in the book on the front end. At the back end, I think we set aside about $100, if I remember correctly, just to buy and gift some books away. But we actually didn't even get through giving those books away, because we ended up, hitting our target of being number one. And so that was us looking at our assets and everything we had, saying, if I was a business owner who had nothing, what could I do? How could I get a number one best-selling book out there? And and then use that to generate more business. Because as we sent that book out to people, or as people bought the book and got aware of it, as we talked about it, people start reaching out to us and saying, hey, we need to talk to you. We need, can you do some business with us? Right. Strategic partnerships, clients, all of that started to show up as a result. So we lived what we were teaching in the book. And I think that's a really powerful thing to be thinking about is, how could you do that? Because that book, people can buy that book for, I don't even know what's listed at $5 or something like that on Amazon right now, five or nine. I don't know. I don't remember which, but that's generating money, but it's not about the money the book generates for us. It's actually about the clients it brings in, the strategic partnerships it brings in, things like that, the opportunities for us to go speak in front of audiences. And that was more valuable, investing our time in that than investing our time in going out there to networking events. We spent some time, we got it done, the book written in, I think, 3 or 4 weeks and out there. And that was better than the networking events we'd have gone to in the same period of time.
Absolutely. And when you think about all the people that we had as partners, you have to think about the fact that Amazon was, in a sense, a partner. It's a resource that's out there that we could use. All the people that did testimonies and stuff like that, they were not just doing it because it was us. They enjoyed the book and got benefit out of it. So that was more of a barter. It's like, we'll give you the book and then you let us know if it works. So there are a lot of ways of being able to fill these roles or getting help with the roles. It might be somebody that teaches you how to do something. Teach me how to do the bookkeeping so I can do it. It could be an online course that you take or something. It could be somebody that helps you. But the bottom line is that if it's not being taken care of, again, then you're in trouble. And so you've got resources like from the asset inventory. Who do I know? What's available to me? What do I have possession of? What ideas do I have that I can leverage and things like that? You have people that you can tap into on the mastermind side of things, like we talked about. And it just said, I've got this problem, and let them come up with the solutions. You don't have to come up with all of them. You can go to like a chamber meeting or something like that and find the people that you need who have the expertise in what you do. And quite often you can barter with them. If you'll do the bookkeeping, I'll help you with the marketing because that's my area of expertise. Boom.
Well, and one that I always forget to do myself, which is crazy because of the business I'm in, is I have clients, and these clients are willing to talk to other people about what I do and how great my work is, right? And I forget to ask them to do a warm introduction or to recommend me to someone else or to refer me to someone else. Or I might even forget to ask them for a testimonial. It's like until I need it, I'm like, well, wait, why didn't I ask for this sooner? But if you need sales right now, one of the best options is if you've got clients or customers who have been very loyal to you, who really love what you do, love the value you create, go to them. They can become your marketing and your sales team. The word of mouth marketing, them talking about how great your product is, your services, whatever you offer, and then them talking to their friends, family, business associates, or colleagues, maybe even their competitors, in this type of environment, cooperative competition, they might actually give you leads and prospects that you can close very easily. People might come to you and say, you know what, actually, I'll give an example. Just the other day, I partnered with a gentleman, and we created this online program. And just the other day, his wife, who also works in his business, sent out an email and said, oh, look at this. We had a sale of the online program, and he'd talked to this guy a couple times. My partner in this had talked to this other guy a few times, and just mentioned what we were doing. Well, out of the blue, we got paid. We sold the product. And so it's one of those things, like, you never know when it's going to happen. So if you put your systems in place, you have those conversations, someone talks to someone else, and then boom, there's a sale. You never know exactly when it's going to happen. But if you have these roles in place like that, and you have other people out there that are helping you sell, helping you market because they're talking about how great you are, that's part of your team that most companies don't even pay attention to. Most business owners don't really think about. They're thinking about, how do I go hire a salesperson in today's environment? I can't afford that.
You're absolutely right. So I think there's a lot of points here to cover. I think we ought to mention what the roles are, just real briefly, and how they relate to each other. But
Absolutely.
I also want to mention before I forget that by having all these roles in place, when an opportunity comes along, you are in a position to take advantage of it, and you're not struggling because, oh, I don't have this in place, I don't have a graphic designer, I don't have this in place, I don't have the personnel, to be able to do this, I don't have the training, system of training. I mean, you start backtracking and trying to fill holes that should have been filled all along. And so, you lose out on a lot. You don't even get the opportunity sometimes to bid on something or whatever, because people know you don't have your systems in place, and it's not a very strongly working system. So I'm just going to go through the roles, if that's okay.
Yeah, let's do that, because we talk about them a lot, and probably don't go through them enough so people are aware of them.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I want to make sure that anybody who's listening or watching understands these roles. And maybe it's just going to trigger, I never even thought about that,
Yeah.
because some of these are ones that are very much in the background, as opposed to being in the forefront of what the customers see, and what we focus on the most, which is sales, marketing, and delivery of products. So you've got to have the CEO. Obviously, somebody's got to play that role. And if you're playing every other role, you can't objectively see everything that's going on. And so that's important. Somebody has to be the one who's deciding on your business growth, how the business is going to grow, what's the strategy behind that. That is critical. What's the path we're going to take? How are we going to expand? Are we going to expand? All those kind of things. The wrong model can totally destroy your business, because if you haven't built it to be scalable, you can't grow. Especially when an opportunity comes up. And kind of all of everything that we talk about in Brilliant Business Owner is to build a scalable business that can grow, and can grow without you being there. So obviously the whole idea behind this whole 13 roles part is that at some point you can walk away and everything is still being done. If you're the one that's doing all the marketing and then you want to walk away, there's nobody doing marketing. If you're the one that's doing the bookkeeping and the finance, and you're the only one who knows the books, you can't walk away. You're never going to be able to leave. So that's part of the reason that we built all this. But you have to have somebody doing the strategy. You've got to have the strategy being taken care of. You've got to have your operations. Somebody's got to plan out the operations for the company, the finance side of things. And, whether it's the bookkeeping or, where are we going to invest money? How are we going to bring, like you said earlier, how are we going to get more money for resources? Are we going to go after investment? Are we going to go after a loan? Are we going to leverage what we have? Things like that. The training side of things, people have to be trained. You have to be trained. If you're not staying up on what's happening in the industry, you're going to be in trouble. And that's a big mistake that a lot of people don't think about. They think that because things are going good now, it's always going to go good. But they're not on top of the industry. Sales obviously is a huge part of it. Marketing is a huge part of it. Personnel, being able to, just the human resources part of it, and making sure that that is done correctly is important, because if it's not, you could be running into a whole lot of trouble. And so you could be, paying people that you're trying to pay them as independent contractors, and they're really going to come back, and if you let them go, and they're going to come back as employees and try to get unemployment. And having all those things in place is critical. Risk management is a big part of it. Your insurance, your legal documents, if you have a business where you have to have hazmat and all that kind of stuff. Whatever is a risk within your business, from, on the insurance side, it could be health insurance for yourself, for your employees. It could be liability insurance. It could be errors and omissions. There's a whole lot of things that need to be taken care of. And it's one of the things that we as independent owners and mostly totally put off. That won't happen to me.
Well, data and privacy is another big one that is just massively expanding. And then you've got, the EU putting in new privacy regulations and things like that over the last few years. And now there's California's pushing for some. So there's examples here where risk management is becoming a more important element that small business owners have to pay attention to.
Absolutely. Product development, whether it's you're developing your own products or you're sourcing products, and you've got, or you're developing content like you are for courses and stuff like that. That takes time, that takes energy, and it takes sometimes expertise, partnering with somebody else who has the expertise. I'm glossing over these really quickly, but I think it's just, the point is that there are all of these different roles, and you pick any of those. If you take out the sales part, obviously it's going to be obvious that you're not going to do any business. But if you take out the risk management part, and nobody is taking a look at that and seriously saying, okay, is it time to update my policies? Do I need to up try to reduce my liability in these different ways? Do I have something new that needs to be insured? That kind of stuff. If you're not spending the right time to figure out what products you're going to offer, and that, if you have a store and you're putting in products that your customers, you might love the product, I want to sell this, but if it's not something your customers are going to buy, that's not going to work. You're not going to sell anything. If something that you have in the store is taking up too much room and it doesn't move fast enough, then you run into a challenge, because you could be putting things in there that are more lucrative, that they turn over faster and they're smaller. Toilet paper, one of the reasons we had the big toilet paper challenge with COVID is because it is a very high, bulky thing that takes up a lot of space that they don't make very much money on. So they did not keep that stocked, and I mean, it takes a big shipment to fill up one row. So I mean, there are things that people, you can't be an expert at all of this. It's impossible to be an expert at all of it. And you may be doing okay. I think this is the part that I think most people miss. You may be doing okay with what you're doing. You may be satisfied with it, but the parts of being a brilliant business owner, like building a business that will stay forever, that will support your heirs, that will, that you can sell later on, those pieces are going to be missing. If you're doing everything yourself, those pieces are going to be missing. Think about, if you went to sell your business, what do you have that you can sell? You're doing all the work, or you and your small team, you're doing everything. And you take you out of the picture, you're the expert, you're the face of the company, you're the expert. Then there's nothing to sell. You have a customer base that may or may not want to go with somebody else as the expert.
I think it's so critical to understand these roles. And thanks for putting them all out there for us again, because one of the biggest challenges I see, and I think it's been revealed when we look at what's happened over the last 4 or 5 months here, and a new contact of my new associate I've met, she points to this all the time. She says, if you look at good times, hide a lot of bad practices, right? And so almost anyone can make money in good times. But as soon as those good times go away, all the bad decisions, the bad practices, the duct tape solutions, if you will, they sort of show up, and then you got all these leaks in your dam, if you will, and all of a sudden the dam just breaks, and it's like, well, there goes all my profits, there goes all my sales. Now what do I do? And so I think it's really critical in a time like this, and there's a balance here, because, and one of the things we talk about in the Brilliant Business Owner too is that while all these roles are important, and while you've got to think about them, we have to maintain and balance our personal side of this, because we could get overwhelmed very quickly. I can imagine people watching this, there's probably some of them out there saying, crap, I'm not doing all these roles. I don't have them covered. I'm not doing my bookkeeping, or maybe I don't have someone hired to do my bookkeeping, or I'm making sales, but I'm not really, I don't have a sales system in place. I occasionally do marketing and get on social media and promote my stuff, but I don't do it consistently. I don't have a graphic designer, so I just kind of piece things together myself. So whatever that is, I know there's people out there listening to this right now, and they're having these types of thoughts. The key here is you can't be overwhelmed. And I don't want to say that like you can't, but don't be overwhelmed. It's take a breath. Look at where you are, evaluate where you are right now. Understand, look at the system, look at those 13 roles, and really grasp, what is it that's holding me back right now? Which of these roles, which particular tasks even, are the ones that are preventing me from moving forward? So let me just take a little example here. Let's say you still haven't applied for PPP, or was it EIDL? I think that's the abbreviation, if I got it right. And you're having, you're not making your sales. You don't have the cash flow coming in, but you say, I need to keep my business afloat. I need to pay some people. I need to move forward. I need to pay myself. And you haven't taken just a couple hours to sit down and apply for those things. That could change your world for the next several months to get the PPP, to get the EIDL. Yes, there are loans. Yes, some portion of it can be forgiven. We're not giving financial advice here, but if you just paused for a few moments and said, gosh, I'm going to do this. And I speak from experience, because I delayed getting the PPP. I jumped on it right away, but I ran into some challenges with my bank. They weren't open. It was one thing after the other. And I delayed, and I missed the first round of the PPP. And I had to wait till they reopened it again. And part of that was on me. Part of it was on the management and administration of the whole system. But I share that and kind of open up to that, because that had me very nervous for a period of time, because I had clients that basically had to pause on the projects, pause on payments. One client didn't pay me for over 100 days. I mean, that was a pretty sizable piece of business there. And so if you look at your business and really say, okay, if you are stressed out, if you are feeling overwhelmed, ask yourself, what is that one thing that if I moved this forward, it would move my business forward, or it make my business more stable? And I think if we begin to start looking at things from that perspective, we just put one brick in place a day and we build a foundation over time. There's no way you're going to be able to do all of this. You can't do all of this in one day. You can't do all of this in 1 week. It's going to take you time. I mean, Vinny and I, we've been building another business. We brought in partners because we knew we didn't know everything. Vinny actually is the one that started the whole concept, and then at some point approached me, and he had put the team together that he wanted to have. I was brought into that team, so I wasn't even leading this at the time. But now,
nothing personal, Tony.
Oh no, not at all. I wasn't the right person to bring on board in that first round of discussions. It was only after you began with the others that I was the right person to bring on board for that, that piece of it. But I look at that, and I look at how we have laid the foundation, and we started with one idea, and we built and we built and we built and we built. And it even went from, I was just in the beginning, I was just giving some advice and being kind of on that board of advisors. It eventually became a partner in it because of what I was bringing to the table and what we decided we needed as we grew the business. And now the business is out there, and we'll talk about it. We'll share it with people, but it's something that there's a demand for it. It's essential. We saw that it was critical for where we are in the world today and moving forward, and the opportunity there. So those are the types of things, like we literally, any business that we've been building, we follow this, but it's only putting one brick in the foundation at a time. You can't do this all overnight. And the other piece of this is, if you look around, this is kind of an offshoot of this. If you look around and say, you know what, I don't think I can get all my stuff and all my ducks in a row. I don't think I can do everything I need to do. One of the things you might consider right now is looking around at other businesses where they might be struggling too. Maybe they're a complementary business to yours, so they provide products and services in a similar vein to yours, but it's kind of complements your offerings, right? Maybe you can look at those businesses and say, hey, it's a good time for me to sell, or it's a good time for me to buy, because there's a lot of businesses out there that you can buy right now for a pretty good value because they're struggling. But when you put your forces together, maybe they've got a great sales team and you don't. And you say, okay, let's merge. Let's one of us buy the other one out. Let's do a joint venture. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can start looking at things like that. But I think it's critical today to say, I don't need to do all of these right now. Which one is the most essential for me to focus on right now? And how could I do it? What are all the different ways that would be possible for me to fill those roles, fill those particular needs in today's environment where I sit today?
You're absolutely right. And I think this is a very important time to bring in an advisory board or a mentor, because we don't often see what our weaknesses are, or what we haven't put enough energy into. We think that, we have done an adequate job in that. We just, that's not necessary right now. And the sequencing is a huge part of this, being able to know what you need to do, in what order that you need to do it in order to make things work. And there are a lot of challenges in trying to understand every aspect of your business by yourself. And what we're really talking about here is kind of transitioning from being a small business owner into being the CEO of the company, and looking at things from that 30,000-foot view of your company, and being able to really give an honest assessment of all 13 roles. And sometimes we can't, when we're we're stuck right in the middle of everything. We're doing everything on a day-to-day basis, and it's taking every hour that we have. The most valuable hour that you can take is to get advice from somebody else who can take a look at it from a totally different perspective. Let them take the 30,000-foot view of it. Because, there are things that I think I'm really good at that I know if I ask Connie, she's going to say, no. Or if I ask you, because you see things from a different perspective. There are things that I want to believe about myself, that I'm good at this, I'm good at that. And there are things that I probably completely ignore that I really do have a strength in doing. So it does come back to, you have to see what all of these roles are and how they communicate with each other, not just that they're in place, but that they're communicating with each other. Because if they're not, then you're going to have a major struggle. If you've got the finance, is saying, okay, this is how much money we're not making, and yet, your operations is going out spending more money, and they haven't talked to each other on how that's going to work, you're going to run into a major problem. And you can combine any two of these, because they're all symbiotic, and find out where they need to communicate and how they need to communicate. And sometimes we can't see that, because what we do is we take off one hat, we put the other one on. I'm going to sit and do my bookkeeping, and it has nothing to do with everything else other than just the numbers, without looking at, how much money did we spend on marketing?
Yeah.
And being able to look at all of the different roles from the the CFO's role and the CFO's perspective, because it's just bookkeeping to us.
Yeah, and so I think there's another metaphor or analogy here. I'm not sure which is going to turn into a metaphor or analogy, so I caveat it with both. I would take this perspective. Imagine you have a large boardroom table, and around that table you have a little placard in front of each seat that says one of those 13 roles, right? You've got the CEO at the head, 6 on this side, 6 on the other side. And what you need to do in your business is literally move from seat to seat. And it's not just about, I think this is the point you were getting to. That's why I jumped in here. It's not just about doing the work of the meeting, doing the work of those roles. If you think about it this way, let me expand the idea here a little bit further. Outside of the boardroom, there are 13 cubicles, right? Or 13 offices. And you have to be in each one of those offices every week. You can't go a week without being in one of those in those offices at least once. But when you come to the boardroom, it's not about doing the work. In the boardroom, it's about sitting in each one of those seats and communicating with the rest of the leaders in the company about how from your role, your perspective of what's happening in the company. And so you've got the doing work, which happens in the offices or cubicles outside the boardroom. And then you have the boardroom itself where you communicate with one another and you have those conversations. And, as a small business owner, a lot of times, it's having those conversations in your own head. It's having those conversations with yourself, but you do have to take that perspective, and you might literally have to sit at a table and say, okay, I am being the CEO. And I'm going to look in the roles on this, the 6 roles on this side of the table, the 6 roles on this side of the table. And I'm going to give you my perspective of what I see working and not working. I'm going to tell you what you're doing well. I'm going to tell you what I don't think you're doing well. And then I'm going to go sit in each one of those roles around the table. If you don't have people in those roles, you got to take that. And so wherever you don't have a person sitting right now, like maybe it's a contractor or a vendor or an employee, then you sit there and you give and accept the perspective of other people, right? You ask them and you give your perspective on things. So I think that's as crazy as it sounds that you might want to sit there and actually spend an hour or 2 hours a week having that board meeting. I think it is absolutely critical in your business to do that. And even if you just do it from an imaginary perspective, maybe you sit at your kitchen table if you're working from home and you literally just go around, you have, 13 different placards and you just sit there as the CFO, as the CEO, as the chief operating officer, and you have this meeting with yourself and you really look at your business from all these different perspectives. It will change how you see your business and it will change how you think about your business for sure.
You're absolutely right. And if you're doing it all in one session, you actually start to see the communication between the different departments and the accountability. Accountability is a big part of this because each role, picture if you had those 13 seats and people in each seat in a meeting, what are they going to do? They're going to mastermind. You're going to be able to present a problem and say, how are we together going to do this? And finance is going to come at it from one perspective, and marketing is going to say, well, I can enhance that with this. And then sales are saying, well, if you give me this, then I can go and do this. And so there's communication and there's accountability, because now if the finance said, I'm going to do this, then marketing is going to expect it, or sales or operations, whoever. So you have to be able to separate the roles, obviously, but also look at them from the perspective of how are they part of the system and how are they affecting the rest of the system. And again, it sounds so difficult. It sounds like it can be daunting, and it really doesn't have to be. It is a matter of being conscious of all these different things, looking at any challenge, any opportunity, anything that happens from all 13 roles. So this is an opportunity that we have. From a financial perspective, how does that work? From a marketing perspective, what am I going to need for training? Do I need to hire more personnel? Do I need to change something in our, get a new insurance policy? Do I need to, have legal contracts drawn up? Do we need to change anything in operations? Do I need to buy anything? Do I need to sell something? Do I need to bring on partners? You look at it from all the perspectives instead of just saying, boom, let's do it, without having a really, really good knowledge of how. And sometimes it's good. I'll admit, I jump into things. Yep, let's do it. And then we figure out how we're going to do it later on. But if it totally is going to engross my business and require my current business to be involved in that, I have to look at it and say, do I have these resources, or how am I going to get them? Do I have this, this insurance and this legal document, and if not, how am I going to get them, and how am I going to be able to pay for all this? And I have to look at all those things. And just having them on a whiteboard or on a just on your wall, and occasionally looking at them and saying, how would a CFO look at this? How would a marketing director look at this?
Well, and as an example for that, I think about the business that we've just launched, the Spark here. I am not the salesperson per se. I'm not the head, that part of it. There's a piece of business that you brought
Yes, you
to
are.
well, well, I would say from this way, let me say this. You brought a piece of business to the table that through a relationship that you had, and they needed pricing, and you knew you weren't the right person to do the pricing, and you kind of like, okay, who's going to do the pricing in that? And then because of my experience and the business we're in, it kind of fell upon me. And so I'm trying to figure things out. I'm looking long term. I'm looking at all these different, issues that I'm aware of might come up, and figuring out how do we price this. But then I have questions, and I'm like, so I bounce it back to the team and I say, okay, here's what I'm seeing. Here's some of the challenges that I see. Where do we go from here? And so other members of the team jump in to provide their perspective on it. And so it was interesting to go through that process, because we're so early stage. We haven't quite figured out exactly where everyone's bucket is, if you will. And we've all been small business owners or mid-sized business, owners. We've all played different roles in corporate types of jobs and that. So we have such varying skill sets that we're still trying to hone where are the lines drawn, not to like say, well, that's not my responsibility, but to be really clear about, okay, who's responsible, who's accountable, who's going to do these things? Because if we just assume, well, they can do it, but we never ask, we never clarify that, then things fall through the cracks because, right, we leave them go. And so, it was interesting just going through that process to observe how our team is working together and how we're starting to kind of fit into these roles of marketing or sales or operations or finance. And really it's bringing out interesting, for me anyway, interesting perspectives on, okay, maybe I am actually pretty good at this skill, but because I haven't had to really use it before, or not use it for a long time, I kind of have to dust it off and figure out am I capable, or do I need help? Right. So it's interesting to go through that as you grow your business. Now, I think one of the other things that we need to consider as we look at this is to really think about some tactical things, like what are some areas that business owners today need to be thinking about in the time we're in right now. So we talked as an example, I mentioned the PPP. I mentioned some, if your sales are down, you might need to partner with another company that's as a joint venture, as a maybe a merger, those types of things. We talked about the PPP and the financial side. Like if you haven't done that, maybe you need to sit down and apply for that, right? So those are kind of two ideas. What are some of the other things we see business owners struggling with right now? And some ideas that we could give them very tactically, like they could go out and say, okay, I'm gonna spend an hour or 2 hours on this today, or maybe this weekend, and that would really help them move forward. What do you see, Vinny?
That's a big question.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. And that's why I want to bring it up, because I think we can spend some time on going into the different roles and talking about some of the things that we see in different roles.
I think most business owners get really bogged down because they feel very alone when things are kind of not going as well. When the virus hits and everything, it's like, I'm a solo entrepreneur. I have a very small business.
And I'm locked in my house.
Locked in my house. I mean, there's so many different things that affect us from a personal standpoint as well as a business standpoint, and they are intertwined. So I think the biggest thing, we've talked about teams before, and the fact that people just need to lean on the people who they know, people who they have, people that, sometimes it's not even people it's people you find for different reasons. But, people are having to go to their vendors to say, okay, how are we going to work this out? Because I don't have the money to pay you. What can we do? People are going to lenders and trying, like you talked about with the government subsidies or loans and everything, and that part of it. They're going to their advisory board. They're going to friends and family and seeing. They're going to other businesses that are in the same field and saying, how can we help each other? You have to get out of the bubble. And we do that. We put ourselves in this bubble and we feel It's our responsibility. And so we've got to cover everything. We've got to do all of these roles, especially when you've had to let somebody go. And I think, to recognize all of the resources and all the people that you have that are in the same problem or having the same problem or have a complementary problem. Because there are businesses that are saying, I have too much stock because we're not able to sell it right now. Well, I need that stock. And there are things that ways that you can work it. So I would say the biggest thing is to be very, very open. I think we have, as business owners, we get very closed. We don't want to tell people that we're struggling or where we're having a struggle. And right now, almost everybody's having a struggle. I mean, the only people that really aren't are the tech companies that, sell computers or,
Well, they're struggling to scale now. I mean, they've got to scale up radically and they're struggling to scale. Think about the training side of things is taking a hit. The personnel side, how do we get qualified individuals here? How do we get people, because they still have to work from home. How do we get people to work from home when we have secure environments and that? If you look at Zoom, we're on Zoom right now, broadcasting on Facebook Live as we do this. But Zoom's been hit with all kinds of issues, like their privacy and security was not up to par as they were scaling. They got hit with that. So they had to, I think your points are valid. I just wanted to point out that even the companies that are growing, I've actually had conversations with at least 3 or 4 different pretty good sized logistics companies in my different podcasts that I do. And while they're scaling and they're happy to see that business, they have got some issues that they're dealing with too right now. So, they have clients who are, as an example, retail companies that they do some e-commerce, some retail, but they're looking at what happens. It looks good right now, but what happens if all these retail companies that we support ended up, they can't support, they got to go bankrupt because they can't keep their retail stores, brick and mortar stores open. So they're also thinking about the future, like what happens if, and they're trying to prepare for that. So I think everyone right now, even if their finances don't look bad, I think everyone's facing some pretty significant challenges. So go ahead, keep going. I just wanted to interject there for a moment.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So I think, hiding the fact that you're struggling a little bit in certain areas is probably the worst thing that we can do, because there are probably people out there that have the solution for you. You just don't know they exist and they don't know that you exist. And they have the opposite problem than you have, and they can complement you. I mean, we're building a business for everybody where Zoom is not quite the solution that they need. And that's what our business, we're giving lots of hints here. You mentioned the name of the company really quickly earlier. And I mean, we probably could start sending people to the website, but
yeah, let's do that. What the heck? Let's just get it out there, because we're doing showcases now. We're talking about it. I think this may be a thing that people are good. I'll even put it in the chat box here. Can I be so bold to do that?
Go for it. And we'll talk about, we are building a virtual community. We have a software platform that is designed for virtual conferences and meetings that is very much like a video game where you build an avatar. You can walk around from building to building, from meeting to meeting. You can go out and have private meetings. You can literally talk to other people. Not like Zoom, where you can't just get on Zoom and see who's on there. You can literally go on there and talk to the other people that are on the campus. It's a full campus. It's got about 70 to 80 different meeting spaces and everything. So it's a totally different environment than anything that's out there. And we recognized it because we were looking to do our own virtual conference. Back in 2013, I put on the world's first virtual music conference, and because that's my industry. And literally, it was amazing. We had 500 people from 25 countries. I had 50 speakers from 15 different countries, but this was pre-HTML5 software. It was breaking all over the place. People loved the concept because I had people from all over the world.
Right.
And they were all on for a weekend at the same time and connecting with each other. The problem that we had was in the software. So with COVID, we decided to try to find another way to do that, to bring it up to date with what they had available now. And after searching through about 15, 20 different softwares. We found this one that is light years, as far as we can tell, light years ahead of anything else. And so we basically had a white labeled version of it built for ourselves, to do everything that we wanted to do and 10 times more.
Right. So think of it like it's a combination of shared office space. You know, if you've done, well, I won't mention any brand names, but, you know, shared office space where they've got a big office and you basically pay a subscription and you can go use the office space, right? You can network with people while you're there. It's a combination of that, as well as like this massive convention center where you could hold conferences and meetings, and maybe it's just a training you want to bring your people into. But the power of it, of this virtual campus over something like a Zoom, is that you can interact, you can bump into, and the way I describe it is like you can have that friction. In other words, you can run into other people as you're going around campus and see them just like you would in a shared office space, or you go to the coffee shop and maybe you're a solopreneur and you work from a coffee shop, right? You know, on occasion you go there, you do some work from there, maybe you meet people at a restaurant or whatever else, and you start bumping into other people. You know, that's kind of that friction of the molecules bouncing off each other, right? And it sparks these creative ideas, which is the whole essence behind the spark, the creativity. And so we realized that with everyone being isolated and really not knowing how quickly we're going to be out of this situation, that we had to create an environment where people could literally bump into each other like you and I used to do. You know, you and I haven't even been in the same room for months now, 4 months, at least 5 months now, because of what's going on. And so we're trying to figure out how do we keep this ability to bump into people that maybe we know or haven't seen in a long time, and how do we get those creative sparks flying again so we can create something. And that's where we came up. And the website is www.thesparkvc.com. It's in the chat box there on Facebook Live. But check it out, because, you know, we created this and we've been very quiet about this. In fact, we did a showcase yesterday and I invited some of my clients to it because I see it as really valuable for what they're doing in their business and that. And one of them approached me on the side and said, "You've been keeping this very quiet." I said, well, it's also been moving very fast, you know, and we built a team and we put it together because it's something that we see as an absolute need. Even aside from the business aspect of it, I think all of us on the team look at it and say, we see musicians, we see the TV and film industry, which is, you know, focus that we've got. We see businesses, we see sports, we see all these different realms that are being negatively affected because of isolation, and people need to reconnect. They need to get back to, there's no going back to normal, right? There's going to be a new abnormal. There's going to be new ways of doing things. And we believe that this is one of the new ways that people can do things. They can build relationships. They can bump into each other. They can have those conversations in an online space with people from all over the world that you'd never be able to do in your local coffee shop. I mean, I can bump into a very small segment of the population in my local coffee shop here, and I go to Panera. I see a couple people I know. I go on here on this campus and I could see dozens or hundreds of people in a given day that I want to have conversations with.
Yeah. And it is, I like the saying, it's not necessarily about the meeting or the education. It's about the hang. It's about being there and being able to connect like you would in a restaurant or a coffee shop with somebody that could be valuable to your business, or that somebody that you admire or whatever. It's going to be amazing. It's the Spark Virtual Campus and Conference Center, or an event center, I'm sorry. And so that's where sparkvc.com comes from. It's virtual campus. And check it out. And if you'd like a tour, there's a button on there. You can let us know that you'd like a tour, and we'd be glad to show you around. It's a pretty amazing place. It's addictive. Gotta warn you, it's addictive. You get on there, I get on there. I'm the only one on there because we haven't launched it yet. We can show you the campus or another campus that it's built from. Mm-hmm. But it's addictive just to walk around and imagine all the different ways that it can be used for all the different businesses. And I think it's the wave of the future. There's no question.
I would say that, you're talking about it being addictive, and I think in a very positive way, because if you see, let's say if you've got kids or grandkids, depending on how old you are, and you see them playing these multi role player games where they're getting into this game and they're running around and, collecting things or shooting things or whatever it is, right? It's that type of environment where they can engage with other. Well, no, it's that type of environment, if you will, where you can move around, you can engage with other people. It's a multi-role player environment is really what it is. But it's not the gaming side. It's actually building your business, actually building relationships, actually creating things while you're there. And it's a phenomenal idea. I mean, I didn't come up with the idea. It's like I've been there. I'm part of the team, but I've been blown away at how quickly it's shifting what I see possible that I didn't imagine before. And I think it's not just like the next fad. It honestly is I call it, I was talking with someone the other day, I call it a bridge between the real life networking and connecting and spark, if you will, and what eventually will come about, which is where we've got the virtual reality glasses, goggles, something on, and we're meeting people from that. This is that bridge between the two. And that's why
working on that. That's part of
the
future iteration.
Yeah. And that's where I see things going. So that's why I realized this is a reality. This is something that is the wave, not just a wave. It is where the world is moving to, because people are more connected than ever before. And this is just a brand new way to shake hands, if you will, in a virtual environment. And so, if anyone's interested, go to www.thesparkvc.com. Check it out. Let us know if you want to have a tour. We'd love to demo it and give you a tour and talk about what's possible for you. And I'm excited about it. And we weren't planning on revealing that today, but it came up in the conversation, and frankly, it does fit into this, if you will, because first of all, the experiences we've had about every role is important. We've had to figure out how to fill every role in this. But the other piece, I think, why it's important to talk about today, because every role in your business is important, and there are certain things that, because we're in a new era now, that we can't go out and meet like we used to, can't travel like we used to. Training is not what it used to be. I mean, people are using Zoom, they're finding ways around it, but you don't have conferences going on with hundreds or thousands of people in your industry or in your profession, and so without having that, how are you connecting with people? Even if you do a Zoom or a webinar or something like that, you still, you may get the education, but you're missing the relationship building elements of it. And this is one of the pieces that the sparkvc.com, when you go there and you see it, this is one of the things that the campus that we have actually solves that problem, which is why I'm so excited about it.
Absolutely. There's a short video. It's 1 minute and 10 seconds, I think, right on the homepage. So you can kind of get an idea of, this is a past conference that was held on the Identical Software platform. And so check it out. And if I'd love to we're doing tours now, because our version will actually launch formally in September. So, but we are doing preliminary tours right now so people can see it. And we will be hosting our own events on there. But we are also open to, we're talking to some major conferences right now that are looking for a new home, a virtual home. So, and individual meetings, day meetings, half day meetings and stuff like that. So,
I'll be doing all kinds of training there myself. I'll be bringing people in to do customer experience training. I know, like I said, the clients that I had that were there that saw it yesterday, they were blown away thinking about ideas already. I've got to follow up with them because they're already like, wow, there's so much that could be possible here. So with that, Vinny, any further comments, any further thoughts around this concept, this principle that we talked about today about every role being important, equally important in the business?
I think just do not let that whole thought overwhelm you. Make sure that you're being able to delineate the different roles and what needs to be done in your business, and that everything is being taken care of. But you do have to prioritize. It's going to take a while to transition from wherever you're at right now to actually having this in place, no matter what business it is. I mean, a lot of times big businesses still have the miscommunication between departments and stuff like that because somebody was not watching and monitoring and making sure that that's being done. So little by little, your goal is to move yourself out of being the active person doing all 13 roles and moving into just the first role, which is the CEO. And maybe you're taking on something else because you love it. You love the sales part. You love meeting people. That's great. But, you know, it's a role that you could train somebody else to do. And therefore, if you had to leave, if you had to if you were sick, if you wanted to go on vacation, whatever, the business would still run. And so, you know, take it one step at a time. But the first thing is to identify all the roles. And we did talk about it in week number.
I think it was week number 2.
Yeah.
Because before we started the principles. Yeah. So go back to episode 2. Episode 1 was about the asset inventory list, because that was such a critical thing to get on the table. Episode 2 was about all the different roles that we have. So go back and listen to that if you want to. And if you've got any questions, if you're struggling with something, don't know where to go with something, don't know who to have it as an advisor, whatever your challenge may be, if you can't figure out how to move forward with that, reach out to Vinny, reach out to myself. You can find Vinny as Vinny Ribas, and you can find him on LinkedIn and on Facebook. I know that you can also Google him and you'll find him out there as well. If you want to reach me, Tony Bodoh, Bodoh, and you know, I'm available on LinkedIn, Facebook, and you can also Google me and you'll find one of my businesses out there. TonyBodoh.com is the website for that. But Vinny and I work together in LeaderBridge, and that website is leaderbridge.net. If you want to check out the book Leverage, it's leaderbridge.net/leverage. And I'll put that in the comments here in a moment. If you want to look for the book, you can actually go on Amazon. It's available on Amazon as a Kindle version. We do not have a hard copy yet, but you get instant delivery and you can kick it off instantly if you want. And we've got some resources, you know, URLs to resources in the book and that. So with that being said, that is a wrap on principle number 4. And next week, Friday at 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific, all those different time zones, we are going to jump into principle number 5. And Vinny, what is principle number 5 for the brilliant business owner?
I take responsibility for the outcomes and effects of the system.
Awesome. So that is next week, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. On Friday, we're going to talk about principle number 5 for the brilliant business owner. I take responsibility for the outcome and effects of this system.
Awesome. Thank you all.